Remainers are to blame for Brexit. That's what I've been told. My name's Mike Cashman. Because thousands of you watch some of these videos, I keep making them when I think I've got something to say. If you want to see more of them, please subscribe to the channel. So, Remainers are to blame for Brexit. As I say, this is what I've been told. Now, before we go any further into that, that does reveal one thing very clearly, which is that those who say it think that Brexit is something of a mess. They wouldn't be looking for people to blame otherwise. They wouldn't say, this Brexit is all down to you, if they thought the Brexit was wonderful. They would be claiming credit for it themselves. But what about that statement, Remainers are to blame for Brexit? Now, it sounds at first like bollocks, but if you go deeper into it, I think you can find that it's complete and utter bollocks. Just at first sight, it sounds nonsense. It's a little bit as if there was a campaign to reintroduce the death penalty. Many of us campaigned against it, said this is wrong to execute people by hanging. What if it turns out that they're innocent? But we don't succeed in that campaign, and the death penalty is brought back in. In fact, it's brought in by firing squad, and somebody innocent is executed, and we say, well, we didn't want the death penalty in the first place. And other people say, well, this is your fault. If you hadn't opposed death by hanging, then we wouldn't have ended up with a death penalty by firing squad. So it surely has got to be complete nonsense to say that the people who campaigned against something, who marched in their millions, who pointed out the flaws in it, whatever, are to blame for the Brexit that they never wanted. But if we unpack the argument, it turns out that what's being said is, well, the particular Brexit that you've got is a result of disagreements in Parliament and Remainers not agreeing, and delays, arguments about the particular type of Brexit. And there is a myth that we struggled for years to bring about Brexit, and there was so much opposition. That's why it took so long. Let's look at the detail. Theresa May issued Article 50 in March 2017. So she could have done it earlier. She probably wasn't ready when she did. It would have been extremely sensible to find out before issuing it whether it was possible to withdraw it unilaterally, which she didn't know at the time, but the law on that was established later. And the likely 2-year period before that took effect took us to March 2019. Now, more could have been done in that time, but that's the question of the Theresa May Conservative government. In fairness to Theresa May, in terms of timing, if you ignore the details of her deal, then she did bring a proposed deal to Parliament late in 2018, first time. She suffered 3 massive defeats in Parliament, largely because of opposition by the hardline far-right ERG. The initial defeat was by 235 votes. Yes, there were people supporting Remain opposing that as well, but they weren't the cause of it not getting through. The Graham Brady amendment early in 2019 is interesting because it said, suppose you could have Brexit without the Northern Ireland backstop, but otherwise, according to the Theresa May deal, would you support it? And the majority of MPs supported it. So it ignored the problem of Northern Ireland, but it was useful to see that going through because it established that Parliament as a whole was in principle prepared to support the Theresa May Brexit deal with that exception. So there were a series of extensions after the end of March, a brief one to mid-April, and then through to October 2019 and then until January 2020. So taking less than a year in total, were a series of indicative votes, almost reached some useful conclusions, but not quite. Theresa May was ousted and Boris Johnson became Prime Minister instead. I don't see Brexit being moulded by Remainers in that time. There was the attempt with the indicative votes that didn't come off. The hard right of the Tory party were pushing for somebody more hardline, and they did indeed manage to achieve that by electing Boris Johnson. The main intervention by MPs in Parliament in the October of 2019 was to argue against a no-deal Brexit outcome. Boris Johnson had sought to circumvent that by proroguing Parliament, which was illegal. He sacked, I think, 21 MPs and gave himself a massive non-majority, negative majority. But the point at issue was they were opposing no-deal Brexit. Now, I know Tories have often said, well, you have to have no deal on the table in order to get the deal that you want. Every time they used that analogy, they used it in the context of a new purchase. Suppose you're buying a car, suppose you're making a new contract. Never in the context of an existing arrangement which you're seeking to work a way to end it. So it's more akin to a divorce than a new purchase. But ultimately, we know that the Boris Johnson Tory government didn't go for no deal, and the European Union, despite it being cited as, it helps in brinkmanship to threaten no deal, if we look at the deal that was actually done, and it's very obvious that, as December worked through, that the two parties were actually reasonably close together, and the European Union will have been aware that the Johnson government was not going to go for no deal. So the supposed sabotage by particularly Tory MPs was opposing no deal, and the Tory government didn't go for that anyway. And many of those MPs, by the way, were not Remainer MPs. Many of them were prepared to support Brexit. So as we go deeper into it, is it the case that Remainers prevented an effective Brexit? The further argument that I've heard is, they took so much time that not very much time was left for negotiating the trade and cooperation agreement. This is nonsense. Virtually everybody, I think, with any expertise or awareness in the subject, certainly very many people, warned Boris Johnson and the Tories that 11 months was far too short a time to negotiate a trade and cooperation agreement. He ignored them, said he could do it anyway, and some Brexit supporters, perhaps the same ones who said this Brexit is all your fault, but some Brexit supporters have said, look, Boris Johnson achieved what he said. Look, it's a well-known fact in project management. If there is a sensible time that's necessary to achieve a particular project, then if you say you can do it in half the time or a quarter of the time or whatever, you may end up with something, but it will be a shambles. If you say I can build a house far quicker than the next person, well, if you skip planning permission, building regulations, foundations and so on, yes, you can. You can get the walls and the roof up, and it will initially look as if you've achieved your objective. But you haven't actually. And I think the question with the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, to be honest, is this a foundation, walls and roof job, but much missing inside that can be added later? Or is it, as I would suggest, a walls and roof without foundation, where the deal is fundamentally flawed, and even if you were to do that properly, you'd need to go back to the beginning in certain respects, as indeed the Tory government seems to now be deciding to do. So there is a great song by Mitch Benn called Own Your Shit, which says that it is the Brexiters that were responsible for Brexit, not those who opposed Brexit. Song is a little bit sweary, but Mitch, in singing it, the lyrics of the song do make it clear that it is not an attack upon those who voted for Leave, who are following things that they believed in. It is targeted at the leaders of the Leave campaign. They are responsible for Brexit. They may be unhappy with it. They may be busy blaming the EU, blaming Remainers. As Mitch says, take responsibility. You created this mess. You should be trying to sort it out. If you find that useful, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you.